I am Allison Walsh, 34 years old, and I am standing frozen in the foyer of my new $8.5 million mansion, staring at my buzzing phone. 37 missed calls and 62 text messages flash on the screen, all from family members I haven't spoken to in 3 years. 6 months ago, I won the lottery jackpot that changed my life forever, and I kept it completely secret. I thought I'd covered my tracks perfectly when I bought this house under an LLC. But somehow they found me, and now the same people who called me delusional and embarrassing for playing the lottery were suddenly showing up with empty hands and hungry eyes. Before I tell you how my own family tried to destroy me after my lottery win, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Hit that subscribe button if you've ever had to deal with toxic family members, and give this video a thumbs up if you believe that sometimes the family you choose is more important than the one you're born into. Now, let me take you back to where this nightmare began. I grew up in a middle-class neighborhood in Grand Rapids, Michigan. From the outside, we probably looked like a normal family. My father Richard worked in insurance sales. My mother Judith was an elementary school administrator. My older brother Tyler thought he was God's gift to the business world despite his constant failures. And my younger sister Heather seemed to have made a career out of being the baby of the family well into her 30s. But beneath the surface, our family dynamics were toxic, especially when it came to money. My parents were always borrowing funds they never repaid. When I got my first job at 16 working at a local coffee shop, my mother immediately asked for a little help with the electric bill. By the time I graduated college, I'd loaned my family over $15,000 I never saw again. "It's just what family does," my father would say whenever I mentioned repayment. "We all help each other out." The problem was, the help only seemed to flow in one direction, toward them. When I needed emergency dental surgery during my sophomore year of college, my parents told me to figure it out because they were renovating their kitchen. I worked 2 jobs while carrying a full course load to pay off that debt. After college, I became an accountant and built a stable, if modest, life for myself. I lived frugally, saved diligently, and yes, I occasionally bought lottery tickets. It was a small indulgence that gave me a moment of hope, $1 or $2 for the chance to dream about financial independence. My family ridiculed me mercilessly for this habit. "Only idiots play the lottery," Tyler would sneer. "It's a tax on people who can't do math. I thought you were supposed to be the smart one. Please stop buying those tickets," my mother would plead, as if my occasional $5 purchase was a moral failing. It's pathetic and makes us all look desperate. The final breaking point came during Thanksgiving 3 years ago. I'd driven 6 hours to be with the family, bringing homemade pies and gifts for everyone. Within an hour of my arrival, my father cornered me in the kitchen. "I need about $5,000 for a business investment," he said casually, as if he were asking to borrow a cup of sugar. "It's a sure thing. I can pay you back double in 6 months. I had heard this pitch too many times before. "Dad, I don't have that kind of money to give right now," I replied firmly. His face darkened. "What do you mean you don't have it? You don't have kids, you don't have a mortgage. What do you even do with your money?" "I save it," I said simply. The argument escalated until the entire family was involved, with everyone taking my father's side. "You're so selfish," Heather spat. "I have 3 kids to feed, and you're hoarding your money like some dragon." "Maybe if you spent less on stupid lottery tickets, you could help your family," Tyler added with a smirk. I left that night, driving through a snowstorm rather than spending another minute in that house. The text messages that followed were vicious. Accusations of betrayal, selfishness, claims that I thought I was better than family. I made a decision that night to cut all contact. For 3 years, I built a peaceful life without them. I advanced in my career, made real friendships with people who respected boundaries, and yes, I still bought my weekly lottery tickets. Then came the day that changed everything. I stopped for gas on my way home from work and purchased a Powerball ticket on impulse. The next morning, still half asleep, I checked the numbers on my phone. I had to sit down. All 6 numbers matched. $120 million. The lump sum after taxes would be $68.4 million. I didn't scream or dance or tell a soul. Instead, I called in sick to work, drove to the nearest major city, and consulted with the best lottery attorney I could find. Sarah Mitchell. Within hours, I had also secured financial advisor James Perkins, and together we created a plan. We'll form an LLC called New Horizons Investments, Sarah explained. You'll claim the prize through the company, which will help maintain your anonymity. For 6 months, I lived exactly as I always had. I kept working, stayed in my modest apartment, and carefully planned my new life with Sarah and James. I paid off my student loans and car, but made no ostentatious purchases that might raise eyebrows. Finally, after months of discipline, I allowed myself one indulgence: my dream home. A stunning 6,000 square foot property overlooking Lake Michigan, purchased through my LLC with no public connection to me personally. I gave notice at my job, citing a new opportunity, and prepared to start my new life. Moving day was exhilarating. As the last of my furniture was being arranged, I stood in the soaring entryway of my new home, feeling a sense of peace I'd never known. Then I heard car doors slamming in my driveway. Through the decorative glass of my front door, I saw them, my parents, Tyler, Heather, and her husband Tim, all approaching with wide smiles that didn't reach their eyes. My stomach dropped as 3 years of blissful silence came to an abrupt end. "Surprise!" my mother called out as I reluctantly opened the door. Her arms were outstretched as if we'd been separated for a week rather than 3 years of deliberate no contact. Behind her, the rest of the family beamed with artificial warmth. "What are you doing here?" I asked, not bothering to hide my shock. "And how did you find me?" "Your cousin Rebecca saw you at the house viewing and told us," my mother explained, breezing past me into the foyer without waiting for an invitation. She gazed up at the crystal chandelier and marble staircase. "My goodness, Allison, this place is unexpected." The others followed her lead, invading my space with exclamations of admiration that sounded hollow and rehearsed. "Quite a step up from your apartment," Tyler remarked, running his hand along an antique console table that had cost more than his car. "Business must be booming." "It's beautiful, Allie," Heather added, using the childhood nickname I'd always hated. "The kids would love to swim in that pool we saw out front." Street, Margaret's Academy, where they go, is so expensive, and their summer programs are just astronomical. I noticed she'd managed to work in both her children and a financial need within her first sentence. "I appreciate the surprise visit," I said carefully, "but I'm in the middle of moving. Perhaps we could catch up another time?" "Nonsense," my father boomed, already making himself comfortable on my new sofa. "We haven't seen you in years. We have so much to talk about. Like how exactly an accountant affords an $8 million lakefront property?" Tyler added with a smirk. My heart pounded. "I'm not an accountant anymore. I work for New Horizons Investments now. And I don't own this house, the company does. I'm managing the property for them." The lie felt clumsy on my tongue, but it was the best I could manage under pressure. "How fortunate," my mother said, her eyes narrowing slightly. "And what exactly does this company do?" "Private equity and investment management," I replied, using the terminology James had coached me on. "Sounds fancy," my father said. "You know, I've been thinking about getting into investments myself. Maybe you could put in a good word for me with your bosses?" Before I could respond, my mother announced, "We brought dinner." Heather made her famous lasagna. She held up a casserole dish, as if it were an offering that granted them unlimited access to my life. Somehow, a quick visit transformed into an impromptu dinner party, with my family making themselves increasingly at home. My mother explored every room under the guise of helping me get settled. My father asked pointed questions about my salary and benefits package. Tyler made snide remarks about my lucky break while helping himself to my expensive whiskey. As I prepared a salad to accompany Heather's lasagna, I realized she had disappeared. I found her in my home office, hastily putting down my phone. "Sorry," she said with an unconvincing laugh. "I was just looking for the bathroom. Nice phone case." During dinner, the questions grew more intrusive, the thinly veiled requests more frequent. Heather needed money for her children's school fees. My father had a new business idea that just needed a little capital. Tyler was between jobs again but had a surefire startup concept. "You know," my mother said pointedly, "family should help family. That's always been our way." "Has it?" I asked quietly. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. After dinner, As I was loading the dishwasher, I heard my father's voice from my office. I quietly approached the door and saw him rifling through papers on my desk. "What are you doing?" I demanded. He didn't even have the decency to look embarrassed. "Just curious about this company of yours. Quite a setup they've given you." I was about to order them all to leave when Heather burst into the kitchen, her face flushed with excitement and my phone in her hand. "You won the lottery," she exclaimed loudly enough for everyone to hear. "I saw the texts from someone named James discussing your Powerball winnings." The room fell silent as everyone stared at me. Then, like vultures descending on carrion, they converged. "You won the lottery and didn't tell us?" my mother asked, her voice trembling with what I'm sure she thought sounded like hurt, but came across as greed. "How much?" my father demanded. "We're your family," Tyler added. "How could you keep this from us?" Their faces had transformed, masks of familial love dropping to reveal naked avarice beneath. Any doubt about my decision to keep my winning secret vanished in that moment. "I want you all to leave," I said quietly. "Now, Allie," my father started, his tone conciliatory but his eyes hard. "Let's not be hasty. We're family. We deserve a share of that money. Don't make us do something you'll regret." The threat hung in the air between us. "Leave," I repeated, pulling out my phone. "Or I'll call security." "You wouldn't dare," my mother hissed. I dialed the number for the security company that patrolled the gated community. "This is Allison Walsh at 478 Lakeside Drive. I have unwanted guests who are refusing to leave. Yes, I'd appreciate your assistance. Thank you." What followed was an ugly scene as security arrived to escort my family out. They caused a spectacle on the driveway, shouting accusations of betrayal and selfishness loud enough for my new neighbors to hear. As their cars finally disappeared down the road, my phone began buzzing with messages. "You'll regret this. We're not done talking. You owe us." Family helps family. I sank to the floor of my beautiful new foyer, surrounded by luxury and utterly alone. The morning after my family's intrusion, I awoke to 27 new voicemails and over 40 text messages. I deleted them all without listening or reading, then called Sarah Mitchell. "We need to meet." "Today," I said when she answered. 3 hours later, I sat in Sarah's sleek downtown office, recounting the previous day's events. Her expression grew increasingly grave as I described my father's veiled threats and my family's reaction to discovering my lottery win. "This is precisely why we created the LLC structure," she said when I finished. "Unfortunately, now that they know, we need to be proactive about protecting you legally." She pulled out a legal pad and began writing. "First, we need to consider restraining orders if they continue to harass you. Second, we'll draft cease and desist letters regarding any discussion of your financial matters. Third, we need to prepare for the possibility they might contest the lottery win." "Contest it?" I asked, bewildered. "How could they possibly do that? They might claim they contributed to the ticket purchase, that you had an agreement to share winnings, or that they're entitled to support based on family relationship. None would likely succeed, but they could create lengthy and expensive legal proceedings." My stomach knotted at the thought of a protracted legal battle with my own family. "I also suggest you meet with James to discuss setting up trusts with very specific conditions, should you ever decide you want to provide for certain family members in a controlled way," Sarah added. After leaving Sarah's office, I drove directly to James Perkins' financial firm. He listened intently, his normally jovial face serious. "Family and money are a volatile mix," he said when I finished. "I've seen it destroy relationships time and again. But we've structured your assets well. They can't touch your money unless you choose to give it to them." As I drove home, my phone rang with an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered on speaker. "Allison. It's Aunt Linda. My mother's sister, whom I'd always been fond of, though we weren't particularly close. Your mother called me crying this morning. She said you've had some good fortune but are shutting out the family. That doesn't sound like you, dear." My knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. "Did she tell you they broke into my phone? That Dad threatened me? That they demanded money they have no right to?" "Well, no," Aunt Linda admitted. "But they're your family, Allison. Surely you can find it in your heart to help them out a little." "I have to go, Aunt Linda," I said and ended the call. When I arrived home, I immediately contacted a security company to upgrade the system throughout my house. As I waited for the technician, I sat down to draft a clear boundaries letter to my family with Sarah's guidance. I typed, "I will not be bullied, manipulated, or threatened. Any future contact must be respectful and within appropriate boundaries, or it will be forwarded to my attorney." My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It was a link to my sister's Facebook page. Against my better judgment, I clicked it and saw a post that made my blood run cold. Some people get a blessing and become so selfish they forget where they came from. Family should come first, not greed, disappointed. Family betrayal. The comment section was filled with sympathetic responses from distant relatives and old family friends, many expressing shock at my apparent cruelty. My phone rang again. My therapist, Dr. Rachel Brooks. I'd scheduled an emergency session. "What you're experiencing is a common reaction to setting boundaries with toxic family dynamics," Dr. Brooks explained during our call. "They're using every manipulation tactic they know: guilt, public shaming, triangulation with other family members. Stay firm in your boundaries." Just as I was finishing my call, the security technician arrived. While he was installing the new system, the doorbell rang. The security camera showed Heather's husband Tim standing alone on my doorstep. I cautiously opened the door, keeping the security chain engaged. "I'm alone," Tim said immediately, raising his hands to show he came in peace. "I just want to talk." Something in his demeanor seemed genuinely contrite. After a moment's hesitation, I let him in. "I want to apologize for yesterday," he said once we were seated in the living room, well within view of the security technician. "The way they behaved was inexcusable." "Then why are you here instead of them?" I asked. Tim sighed. "Because they don't think they did anything wrong. But I do. I saw how they treated you, and it wasn't right." For the first time since they'd appeared at my door, I felt a glimmer of hope that perhaps not everyone in my extended family had dollar signs in their eyes. "They're discussing legal action," Tim continued, confirming my fears. "I told them they're making a terrible mistake, that they should respect your boundaries." "Thank you for that," I said cautiously. "I was thinking, maybe a family mediation session might help? Neutral territory, with a professional mediator to keep things civil? Just to clear the air and establish some ground rules for moving forward?" The suggestion sounded reasonable, and Tim seemed sincere. "I'll think about it," I said. As I walked Tim to the door, I noticed the security technician had moved to the kitchen area. Tim asked to use the bathroom before leaving, and I directed him down the hall. When he returned, he thanked me again for listening and left. It wasn't until hours later, reviewing the security footage, that I saw what I'd missed. Tim had taken a detour into my office and quickly photographed documents on my desk before using the bathroom. The betrayal stung worse for having momentarily believed his act. Even the seemingly reasonable family member had an agenda. I was truly alone in this fight. The following morning, I woke to my phone exploding with notifications. My sister Heather had posted a tearful video on Facebook titled, "When Money Changes People." In it, she sat with her children, telling them that Aunt Allison doesn't want to be part of our family anymore because she has new rich friends. My brother Tyler had shared the video with his own caption, "My sister won $120 million and won't even help with her niece's medical bills. Money reveals character." My niece had no medical issues. The blatant lie made my blood boil. The local newspaper's website featured a story, "Local lottery winner abandons family in need." There was my mother, Judith, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue, telling the reporter, "We're just heartbroken. We've always been there for Allison, and now that she's wealthy, she's turned her back on us. All we asked was for a little help with basic necessities." By noon, my inbox contained messages from childhood friends, distant relatives, and even former colleagues, some expressing disappointment in my greed, others making thinly veiled requests of their own. When I stepped outside to bring in a package, I found the word "selfish" scratched deep into the paint of my car. Hands shaking, I called Sarah. "This is harassment and defamation," she said firmly after I described the situation. "Document everything. Screenshot all social media posts. Save every message. We'll send cease and desist letters immediately. I spent the afternoon gathering evidence, my shock gradually giving way to anger. As I worked, another call came in. My employer. Despite having given notice, I was still technically employed for another week. Allison. We've received some concerning calls, my supervisor said uncomfortably. A man claiming to be your father says you've stolen company funds to purchase property. Obviously, we don't believe this, but I needed to make you aware. He what? I nearly shouted. We know it's false, she assured me quickly. Your record with us is impeccable. But he's made several calls to different departments and even contacted some of our clients. I thanked her for the warning and immediately called Brian Wells, the private investigator Sarah had recommended. I need to know exactly what my family is doing, I told him. All their activities, contacts, plans, everything. That evening, as I was reviewing the cease and desist letters Sarah had drafted, my doorbell rang. The security camera showed Megan, my former assistant at the accounting firm. I hope you don't mind me stopping by, she said when I let her in. I saw what your family's posting online. It's disgusting. You believe me over them? I asked, surprised by her loyalty. Of course I do. I worked with you for 3 years, Allison. You're the most honest, fair person I know. Besides, she added with a small smile, I remember how you never talked about your family. Changed the subject whenever they came up. There was clearly a reason for that. Megan's unexpected support brought tears to my eyes. Thank you, I whispered. I've been defending you online, she continued, showing me her responses to the vicious posts. I know it's not much, but I couldn't stand by and watch them lie about you. For the first time since this nightmare began, I didn't feel completely alone. The next morning, Brian called with his first report. Your family has hired an attorney, Gerald Hoffman. He specializes in contesting lottery wins and inheritance cases. Not particularly successful, but very aggressive. My heart sank. What are they claiming? That you were part of a family lottery pool. That you were collecting money from all of them to buy tickets with an agreement to share any winnings. That's a complete lie, I exclaimed. I have years of bank statements showing I purchased every ticket with my own money. Keep those records handy, Brian advised. Also, you should know they've created a website, AllisonsGreed.com. It has fabricated stories about you refusing to help with medical bills, education costs, even claiming you're letting your parents lose their home. My parents' home had been paid off for years. The pressure continued mounting. Heather posted pictures of her children with captions like, another night of macaroni and cheese while Aunt Allison eats caviar. Tyler gave an interview to a small-time podcast about lottery winners who forget where they came from. The constant barrage of lies and public shaming began taking a physical toll. I experienced my first panic attack while grocery shopping, triggered by an elderly woman who recognized me from the news stories and loudly called me a family-abandoning witch in the produce section. That night, I checked into a hotel under a false name, needing escape from the mansion that no longer felt like a sanctuary. In my hotel room, I called Dr. Brooks. I can't do this anymore, I admitted, my voice breaking. Maybe I should just give them each $1 million to make it stop. That's your fear talking, she said gently. If you give in to emotional blackmail now, you'll be teaching them that their tactics work. This isn't about money, Allison. It's about power and control. I knew she was right, but in that moment, hiding in a hotel room while my family systematically destroyed my reputation, it was hard to stay strong. The next day brought an unexpected development. Brian called with news. I've been looking into your family's history, he said. This isn't the first time they've done something like this. Your father and brother sued a great-uncle 15 years ago after he sold his business for a substantial profit. They claimed they'd provided sweat equity and were entitled to a portion of the sale. What happened? I asked. Case was dismissed. But not before your uncle spent thousands defending himself. There's also a lawsuit against your maternal grandfather's estate from 10 years ago. Your parents contested the will when he left most of his assets to a conservation foundation. The pattern was clear. My family had a history of targeting wealthy relatives. I was just the latest victim. As I checked out of the hotel, determined to reclaim my home and my life, my phone pinged with an anonymous email. The subject line read, You're not their first target. The email contained detailed information about my family's previous financial manipulations, including court documents from cases Brian hadn't even discovered yet. The sender had signed simply, "Someone who knows. You're not alone." After some careful digital detective work and a background check from Brian, I traced the email to Nathan, my mother's estranged brother whom the family never discussed. A quick search revealed he was a successful restaurant owner in Chicago who had completely severed ties with my mother and father nearly 20 years ago. I reached out, and Nathan responded immediately. We arranged to meet at a quiet restaurant halfway between our homes. "I've been watching what they're doing to you," Nathan said when we met. "It's the same playbook they used on me when my first restaurant took off." For hours, Nathan shared stories that mirrored my own experiences: the emotional manipulation, the public smear campaigns, the legal threats. He had documentation of it all and offered to testify if my case went to court. "The only way I found peace was by cutting them off completely," he said. It was hard, but necessary. As I drove home that evening, I felt a new resolve strengthening within me. I wasn't alone in this fight. I had allies: Sarah, James, Brian, Megan, Dr. Brooks, and now Nathan. And most importantly, I had the truth. My phone rang just as I pulled into my driveway. It was the security company. There had been a breach alert. Someone was at my house. The security camera feed showed Heather standing on my doorstep with her 3 children, all clutching small suitcases. She was looking directly at the camera, tears streaming down her face. "Please, Allison," she called out. "We have nowhere else to go. Tim kicked us out. The kids have nowhere to sleep tonight." For a moment, my heart wavered. Then I checked the other security feeds and saw Tyler's car parked down the street, just out of sight of the main entrance. I scrolled back through earlier footage and saw Heather arriving not in a taxi as it would appear, but in Tyler's car. Before approaching my door, she had carefully instructed her children. "Remember, look sad, really sad. Like when your goldfish died." I sat in my car, watching this performance unfold on my phone screen, and felt a strange calm settle over me. In that moment, staring at the orchestrated scene of familial desperation, something inside me hardened. I would no longer be manipulated by these people, related by blood or not. My phone rang again. It was Tyler. "I know you're sitting in your car watching," he said without preamble. "Let them in, Allison, unless you want to be the rich bitch who left her sister and nieces homeless. Imagine how that will play in the press." "Is that what this is about?" I asked quietly. "The press? The court of public opinion? This is about what's fair," he snapped. "You got lucky with a stupid lottery ticket and now think you're better than us. You owe us, Allison. And one way or another, we're going to get what we deserve. Give us what we want, or we'll destroy your reputation completely." I ended the call without responding and sat in silence, considering my options. For a brief, dark moment, I contemplated selling the house, liquidating my assets, and disappearing to another country, starting over where no one knew me or my sudden wealth. As if sensing my moment of weakness, Dr. Brooks called. "Sarah told me about the situation at your house," she said. "Remember what we discussed about emotional manipulation tactics? This is a classic hostage situation, using children as pawns to force compliance." "I know," I sighed. "But it's working. Part of me feels terrible." "That's because you have empathy," she replied. "They're counting on that. But enabling destructive behavior isn't actually helping anyone, including those children." As we talked, I felt my resolve returning. This wasn't just about money anymore. It was about breaking a generational pattern of toxic behavior. "What are you going to do?" Dr. Brooks asked. "Stop running," I replied, "and start fighting back." The thick manila envelope arrived by courier the following morning. Inside were legal documents outlining my family's lawsuit against me, claiming entitlement to a portion of my lottery winnings based on an alleged verbal agreement to share any proceeds from family lottery tickets. I immediately forwarded everything to Sarah, who called within the hour. "This is exactly what we prepared for," she said firmly. "The complaint is full of vague assertions without evidence. They claim you collected money from family members to purchase tickets for years." "That's completely false," I said, anger rising. I bought every ticket with my own money. I know. And we have your bank records to prove it. We'll file our response immediately and push for dismissal. Despite Sarah's confidence, seeing the lawsuit in black and white was devastating. The plaintiffs were listed as Richard Walsh, Judith Walsh, Tyler Walsh, and Heather Carson, my entire immediate family unified in their attempt to take what was mine. The media caught wind of the lawsuit immediately. By afternoon, a small group of reporters had gathered at my community's gate, hoping for a statement or photograph. I received urgent texts from both Sarah and Dominic Reyes, the PR specialist she'd connected me with. Do not speak to any press without consulting us first. I had no intention of doing so. I felt like a prisoner in my own home, blinds drawn against the long-lens cameras, hoping to catch a glimpse of the greedy lottery winner who wouldn't share with her family. The initial court hearing was set for 3 weeks later. As I prepared with Sarah, a new betrayal blindsided me. My cousin Rebecca, whom I had once been close with in childhood, had submitted an affidavit supporting my family's claims. She states that you explicitly told her about collecting money from family members for lottery tickets, Sarah said, reviewing the document. She claims you said, and I quote, "If we ever win, we'll all share it equally. That's our family pact." I never said that, I exclaimed. Rebecca and I haven't had a meaningful conversation in years. The last time I saw her was at a family reunion 5 years ago, and we barely spoke. Her statement has inconsistencies we can exploit, Sarah assured me. But be prepared. They're going to bring in every distant relative and family friend who's willing to lie for a potential payout. The hearing itself was a circus. Reporters packed the courtroom as my family entered with their attorney, Gerald Hoffman, a slick man with an artificial tan and overly whitened teeth. My mother dabbed at dry eyes with a tissue for the camera's benefit. My father wore a neck brace that I'd never seen before. Heather had brought her children, despite the judge's clear instructions against having minors present. I sat stiffly beside Sarah, avoiding eye contact with any of them. Hoffman presented their case with theatrical flair, describing me as a calculating individual who had taken family funds intended for shared lottery tickets and selfishly kept the winnings. He produced affidavits from not only Rebecca but several other distant relatives and family friends, all claiming knowledge of this family lottery pool. When it was Sarah's turn, she systematically dismantled their claims. She presented my bank records showing the ticket purchases came solely from my accounts. She highlighted the inconsistencies in their statements, different people claiming different amounts contributed, varying accounts of when this alleged agreement began, contradictory descriptions of how the money was collected. Your Honor, Sarah concluded, this is a transparent attempt to exploit my client's good fortune. There was never any family lottery pool, never any agreement to share winnings. These claims appeared only after Miss Walsh won the lottery independently. The judge seemed skeptical of my family's claims but didn't dismiss the case outright, instead setting a date for further proceedings and ordering both sides to produce any additional evidence. Outside the courthouse, I hurried to my car through a gauntlet of reporters shouting questions. From the corner of my eye, I saw my mother giving a tearful interview, portraying herself as the wounded matriarch betrayed by a greedy daughter. That evening, Brian called with troubling news. They're escalating their tactics, he reported. Your family has been systematically contacting everyone in your life. Friends, former colleagues, even casual acquaintances. They're spreading stories about you refusing to help with medical emergencies, educational needs, mortgage payments about to default. None of that is true, I said. Although by now I expected nothing less. I know. But people are believing it because it fits the sudden wealth corrupts narrative everyone loves. You're becoming increasingly isolated socially. He wasn't wrong. My phone had grown quieter each day as former friends distanced themselves from the drama. Even some who initially supported me had gone silent, unwilling to be associated with the controversy. Then came another unexpected email from an anonymous account. The Walshes have done this before. Check into Richard's brother Edward's estate. 1,998. Brian investigated and discovered that my father and his brother had been co-executors of my grandfather's will. Uncle Edward had died suddenly, and significant assets had mysteriously disappeared before being distributed to other beneficiaries. No charges were ever filed. But the pattern was becoming unmistakable. As we gathered evidence of my family's history of financial manipulation, Nathan provided invaluable information about similar tactics they'd used against him years earlier. "They'll never stop," he warned me. "Even if you win this lawsuit, they'll find other avenues to pursue. The only language they understand is absolute boundaries." Just when I thought things couldn't get worse, Heather appeared at my front door, children in tow, a local news crew coincidentally filming from the street, as she tearfully begged for shelter. "Please, Allison," she cried, her performance worthy of an Oscar. "We've been evicted. The children have nowhere to go." The security camera caught what the news crew conveniently didn't: Tyler and my father waiting in a car down the street, coordinating the ambush by phone. I didn't open the door, instead calling the police to report trespassing. As they were escorted away, Heather screamed for the cameras. "She won't even help her own blood. What kind of monster has she become?" The next day, Tyler called. "That was just a taste," he threatened. "Either you settle this lawsuit with a generous offer, or we'll make your life so miserable you'll wish you'd never won that money." I was sitting in my car at a highway rest stop when he called, having fled my home once again to escape the constant surveillance and harassment. In that moment, I seriously considered leaving everything behind, selling the house, transferring my assets overseas, and starting fresh in another country under a new name. Dr. Brooks sensed my desperation during our emergency session. "Running away would mean they've won," she said gently. "They want you to feel cornered, to give in just to make it stop. But there's another option, Allison." "What's that?" I asked, exhausted beyond measure. "Stop playing defense. It's time to fight back." The next morning, I met with Dominic Reyes, the PR specialist Sarah had recommended. In his sleek downtown office, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, he reviewed the media coverage of my family's campaign against me. "They've controlled the narrative so far," he said, scrolling through news articles on his tablet. "It's time we changed that." Dominic outlined a comprehensive strategy. Rather than hiding from the press, we would engage selectively. Rather than responding reactively to my family's accusations, we would proactively present the truth. "Your story is compelling," he explained. "A self-made woman who worked hard, saved diligently, and whose first instinct upon winning wasn't to spend extravagantly but to secure her future responsibly." Then, family members who had previously ridiculed and emotionally abused you suddenly appeared, demanding what they hadn't earned. The next week was a flurry of carefully orchestrated activity. First, Dominic arranged an exclusive interview with Catherine Grant, a respected journalist known for her thoughtful profiles. Rather than a sensationalist hit piece, the resulting article presented a nuanced portrait of family dynamics, complicated by sudden wealth, backed by documented evidence of my family's history of financial manipulation. Simultaneously, I established the Allison Walsh Foundation for Financial Literacy, focusing on helping young adults learn sound money management and recognize financial abuse. This wasn't just for public relations. It was a mission I genuinely believed in after my own experiences. Sarah filed expanded legal briefs documenting my family's pattern of targeting wealthy relatives, including sworn statements from Nathan and 2 other estranged family members who had suffered similar treatment. Brian's investigation uncovered something even more damning. My father and brother had criminal records. Richard had been charged with fraud 15 years earlier after a failed investment scheme, ultimately pleading down to a misdemeanor. Tyler had a pending case for credit card fraud involving an ex-girlfriend's accounts. As this information became public through legal filings, my family's lawsuit began to crumble. Their attorney, sensing a losing case, attempted to negotiate a settlement. "They'll drop all claims in exchange for $2 million, Sarah reported after a call with Hoffman. "No admission of wrongdoing on either side." "Not a chance," I replied immediately. "I won't reward their behavior with a single dollar." My refusal to settle enraged my family. They escalated their public attacks, but now the tide of public opinion was turning. Comment sections that had once been filled with condemnation of my greed now contained skeptical questions about my family's motives and character. Then came their most desperate move yet. On a Tuesday afternoon, My security system alerted me to a commotion at my front gate. The camera showed my father collapsed on the ground, my mother screaming for help, and, conveniently, several news crews capturing it all. "He's having a heart attack," my mother wailed. "And she won't even open the gate to save her own father." I immediately called 911, reporting a medical emergency at my address. The paramedics arrived within minutes, but as they examined my father, it became clear there was no heart attack. His vitals were completely normal. When questioned by the paramedics, he claimed it must have been severe anxiety over his daughter's cruelty. The attempted manipulation backfired spectacularly. Footage of the fake medical emergency went viral, with medical professionals commenting on the obvious signs of deception. One paramedic was caught on camera rolling his eyes as my father miraculously recovered enough to give a statement to reporters. Just when public opinion had swung decisively against my family, I received an unexpected message from Jacob, Heather's 17-year-old son. "Aunt Allison, I'm so sorry for what they're doing to you. Can we talk privately? I want no part of this." I was immediately suspicious, given the family's history of using deception. I arranged to meet Jacob in a public library with security cameras, bringing Brian along as an unmarked observer. Jacob arrived alone, looking nervous and much older than his 17 years. "Mom doesn't know I'm here," he said immediately. "She'd kill me if she found out." Over the next hour, Jacob revealed the extent of my family's conspiracy against me. They had begun planning their approach the moment they discovered my new house, coordinating stories and tactics for extracting money. "They have weekly strategy meetings at Grandpa's house," he explained. "They talk about which buttons to push to make you feel guilty, which family members to send as innocent messengers." Jacob had recorded several of these meetings on his phone, disgusted by what he was witnessing. In one recording, my father's voice came through clearly. "I don't care what we have to do. She's got millions. And I want mine." "Why are you telling me this?" I asked carefully. "Because it's wrong," Jacob said simply. "And because I want out. I'm applying to colleges as far away as possible, but I need help. They've already said they won't support me going to school out of state because they need me here." After thorough vetting by both Sarah and Brian, I believed Jacob was sincere. I helped him secure an apartment near his chosen university and arranged for his tuition to be covered through my foundation rather than direct payment, ensuring my family couldn't claim I was buying his testimony. When my family discovered Jacob's betrayal, their threats against him turned vicious. With evidence of their harassment, we secured emergency restraining orders against all family members, protecting both Jacob and myself. The court date for my family's lawsuit finally arrived. Their attorney, sensing complete defeat, made a last-minute motion to withdraw the case. The judge granted the motion but took the unusual step of issuing a stern warning about the consequences of bringing frivolous lawsuits and potential sanctions if similar actions were attempted in the future. As we left the courtroom, my father attempted to approach me, but was blocked by security. "This isn't over, Allison," he called out, his face contorted with rage. "Family is forever." "No, Dad," I replied calmly. "Some things do end. This is one of them." For the first time since winning the lottery, I felt truly free. After the lawsuit's dismissal, an uneasy quiet settled over my life. For nearly 2 months, there were no ambushes, no media statements, no late-night threatening calls. My family had seemingly accepted defeat and withdrawn. I cautiously began rebuilding my life. I developed a genuine friendship with Nathan and his family, finding in them the warm, supportive relationships I'd never had with my own parents and siblings. My bond with Jacob grew as he prepared for his freshman year of college, our conversations evolving from the family drama to his hopes and dreams for the future. The foundation was flourishing, partnering with community colleges to provide financial literacy programs for young adults. I'd found purpose beyond simply managing my wealth, and for the first time in months, I felt genuine peace. Then, on my birthday, a package arrived. Inside was an exquisite vintage watch I'd once admired in a magazine article years ago. The card read simply, "From your loving family, we're sorry." I stared at the gift, conflicted emotions washing over me. Part of me remained deeply suspicious, but another part, the part that had always longed for genuine family connection, wanted to believe this could represent a real change. A week later, an email arrived from my father. His tone uncharacteristically humble. "Allison, we've had a lot of time to reflect on our behavior and are deeply ashamed. We understand why you needed to protect yourself from us. If you're willing, we would like the opportunity to apologize in person. Just a simple dinner, neutral territory, no discussions of money or the past. Simply a chance to begin healing." I forwarded the email to Sarah and James, both of whom advised extreme caution. "This sudden change of heart seems suspicious after their scorched earth tactics," Sarah warned. "If you do meet them, have witnesses, record everything, and maintain firm boundaries," James added. Despite their concerns, I found myself considering the invitation. Dr. Brooks helped me explore my mixed feelings. "It's natural to hope for reconciliation with family," she said. "Just be sure you're making this choice with clear eyes, not out of guilt or obligation." After much deliberation, I agreed to meet my parents at an upscale restaurant of my choosing. I arranged for Brian to be present at a nearby table and informed the restaurant management of the situation. When I arrived, I was surprised to find not just my parents but Tyler and Heather as well, all dressed formally and looking appropriately contrite. "Thank you for coming," my father began, his voice thick with what appeared to be genuine emotion. "We know we don't deserve your time." What followed was a dinner unlike any I'd ever experienced with my family. My father spoke of his own father's emotional abuse and how it had shaped his understanding of family relationships. My mother tearfully acknowledged her failure to protect me from manipulation. Tyler admitted his jealousy of my stability and success. Even Heather spoke of her sense of entitlement and how she'd used her children as emotional pawns. "We don't expect forgiveness," my mother said, dabbing at her eyes. "We just wanted you to know that we understand now why you had to distance yourself." No one mentioned money. No one made requests. When I insisted on paying the bill, they didn't argue. As we parted outside the restaurant, my father asked tentatively, "Would it be possible someday to perhaps have a small family gathering? Just lunch at your home, to try to build something new?" Against my better judgment, touched by what seemed like sincere remorse, I agreed to a carefully planned lunch 2 weeks later. The lunch itself was surprisingly pleasant. My family arrived on time, brought modest hostess gifts, and maintained respectful conversation throughout. They admired my home without making envious comments, asked about my foundation work with apparent genuine interest, and shared updates on their lives without complaints or veiled requests. After they left, I felt cautiously optimistic that perhaps some healing was possible, even if we never regained the closeness that had never truly existed in the first place. That evening, my security company called with alarming news. Their routine sweep had detected multiple hidden recording devices throughout my home, in the living room, dining room, kitchen, and even my private office. Shocked, I reviewed the security footage with Brian. The cameras showed Tyler excusing himself to use the restroom and taking a detour through several rooms. Heather lingering near my desk while complimenting a painting on the adjacent wall. My father engaging me in conversation while subtly placing something beneath the dining room table. Further investigation revealed an even more sinister plot. A detailed email from a reality TV producer to my father had been automatically backed up to the cloud account Jacob had accessed during his documentation of their plans. "Get enough footage of her mansion and lifestyle, and we've got a deal. The secret lottery winner angle is gold. If we can capture some emotionally charged family confrontations, even better." Audiences love watching the newly rich mess up their lives. My family hadn't been seeking reconciliation. They'd been gathering footage for a reality show they were pitching as "Living with Lottery Loot, Family Betrayal." The producer's email outlined their intended roles: Richard as the wronged patriarch, Judith as the heartbroken mother, Tyler as the straight-talking brother who calls out Allison's excessive spending, and Heather as the struggling single mom, conveniently erasing Tim's existence, whom Allison cruelly ignored. The depth of this betrayal, using a facade of reconciliation to further exploit me, was staggering. Even after everything they'd done, I hadn't believed they could sink lower. As I was processing this discovery, Jacob called, panic in his voice. "They never meant any of it," he blurted. The whole apology thing was just to get footage of your house for some trashy TV show. Uncle Tyler's been bragging about it to everyone. Despite having just discovered this myself, hearing Jacob confirm it made the betrayal even more painful. I know, I said quietly. We found the recording devices. I'm so sorry, Aunt Allison. I should have warned you sooner, but I only found out today when Mom was arguing with Dad about her cut of the TV money. After hanging up, I sat in my violated home, surrounded by luxury that suddenly felt hollow. I had wanted so desperately to believe they could change, that some genuine family connection was possible. That hope now lay shattered beyond repair. The morning after discovering my family's reality TV scheme, I called an emergency meeting with my entire support team. Sarah, James, Brian, Dominic, and Nathan. We gathered in Sarah's conference room, security sweeping for devices before we began. This ends now, I said firmly. No more defensive moves. No more hoping they'll eventually give up. I want to settle this definitively. Sarah nodded. I think that's wise. We have more than enough evidence for harassment and privacy violation lawsuits, potentially even criminal charges for the recording devices. But legal remedies can drag on for years, Nathan cautioned. They'll continue finding ways to manipulate the system and drain your emotional energy. That's why I want a different approach, I explained. I want to confront them directly, with all the evidence, and offer them one final choice, one that will either sever ties completely or establish boundaries so strict they'll never be able to exploit me again. We spent hours developing a comprehensive strategy. Brian gathered all evidence of their deceptions, from the fake heart attack to the hidden cameras. James prepared financial analyses showing how their repeated legal challenges were affecting their own financial stability. Sarah drafted airtight non-disclosure and non-contact agreements. Dominic prepared media containment strategies for any potential fallout. 3 days later, my family received formal letters requesting their presence at a meeting in Sarah's office. The letters were carefully worded to suggest the possibility of a settlement, playing on their greed to ensure attendance. They arrived precisely on time. All 4 of them, expressions mixed between smug satisfaction and carefully constructed remorse. Their attorney, Gerald Hoffman, accompanied them, looking considerably less confident than during our court appearances. Sarah led us to the largest conference room, where Brian, James, Dominic, and Nathan were already waiting. My family's expressions shifted to confusion at the unexpected audience. "What is this?" my father demanded. "Who are all these people?" "My team," I replied calmly. "Please, take a seat." Once everyone was settled, I nodded to Brian, who started a presentation on the large screen at the end of the room. What followed was a methodical, comprehensive documentation of every lie, manipulation, and scheme my family had attempted since discovering my lottery win. Their faces grew increasingly pale as they watched footage of themselves planning their attacks, heard their own voices discussing their strategies for extracting money from me, saw the email exchanges with the reality TV producer. "You've been recording us?" my mother gasped, outrage in her voice. "No," I corrected. "You've been recording yourselves. These are your emails, your text messages, your recorded meetings that Jacob provided, security footage from public places. Everything here was obtained legally." When the presentation ended, I stood and faced them directly. "For the past year, you have harassed me, lied about me, attempted to extort money from me, invaded my privacy, and tried to destroy my reputation. You have filed frivolous lawsuits, staged fake medical emergencies, used children as pawns, and most recently, violated my home with recording devices while pretending to seek reconciliation." I placed a folder in front of each of them. "These are your options. Option 1. Sign these comprehensive non-disclosure and non-contact agreements. You will receive a one-time payment of $50,000 each, after which you will legally change your surnames and never contact me or publicly reference me again. Any violation will result in immediate legal action and substantial financial penalties. Option 2. Leave now without signing, and by this time tomorrow, every news outlet that covered your tearful stories of abandonment will receive the complete evidence package you just saw, along with documentation of your previous financial schemes against other family members. The room fell silent as they absorbed the ultimatum. "You can't be serious," Tyler finally sputtered. "We're your family." "No," I said quietly. "You're people who share some genetic material with me. Family doesn't do what you've done." "This is blackmail," my father growled. "This is consequences," I corrected. "For the first time in your lives." Gerald Hoffman, who had grown increasingly uncomfortable throughout the presentation, leaned over to my father. "Richard, I strongly advise you to consider the first option. The evidence they've presented is substantial." As they whispered among themselves, my father made one final attempt at manipulation. "If your father were alive, he would be disgusted by you," he said, venom in his voice. A slight smile touched my lips. "That's interesting, because according to the DNA test results in those folders, you're not actually my biological father, Richard." The blood drained from his face. "I discovered that while investigating our family medical history after your fake heart attack. Quite a surprise, I must say. I wonder if Mother knew all along, or if she was as shocked as I was." My mother's expression of horrified recognition answered that question clearly. The revelation shattered whatever unified front they had maintained. My father rounded on my mother, my brother started shouting about family lies, and Heather began crying loudly. As their arguments escalated, I stood and gathered my belongings. Nathan joined me as I walked toward the door. "You're not staying for their decision?" he asked quietly. "I already know what they'll choose," I replied. Money has always been their only true loyalty. I was right. As we stepped into the hallway, we could hear them arguing not about whether to sign, but about whether $50,000 was enough. Sarah texted me an hour later. "All signed. It's done." As I drove home, a strange lightness settled over me. The family that had tormented me for the past year, that had sought to extract my winnings through manipulation and cruelty, was now legally excised from my life. I felt neither triumph nor sadness, just a profound relief that the constant warfare had finally ended, and on my terms. 6 months passed since the final confrontation with my family. True to the agreement, they had changed their surnames and maintained complete silence regarding me. Sarah occasionally updated me on their activities. They had moved to different cities, making clean breaks from their past identities. The $50,000 had apparently been quickly spent, but that was no longer my concern. My mansion, once a source of such conflict, had finally become the peaceful sanctuary I'd originally envisioned. I'd had it completely redesigned, removing any traces of my family's intrusion. The room where we'd had that fateful reconciliation lunch was now a bright, airy art studio where I was learning to paint, a childhood passion I'd abandoned under my father's ridicule. Dr. Brooks and I continued our regular sessions, though they had evolved from crisis management to healthy processing of my family trauma. "Grief doesn't always look like we expect," she explained during one session. "You're grieving not just the loss of your family relationships as they were, but also the loss of what they could have been. What healthy family relationships should be." I had indeed moved through stages of grief, from the shock and denial of their initial betrayal, through anger at their manipulations, bargaining during moments of weakness when I considered giving them money to make it stop, depression when the weight of their campaigns against me became overwhelming, and finally, acceptance that no amount of lottery winnings could purchase the loving family I had always wanted. Instead, I had built something perhaps more valuable, a chosen family. Nathan and his wife Susan had become like the supportive older brother and sister-in-law I'd never had. Their children treated me like a beloved aunt, not because of what I could give them, but simply because they enjoyed my company. Jacob was thriving in his first year of college, studying psychology with plans to help others from dysfunctional families. We spoke weekly, carefully avoiding discussion of Heather and the others. My friendship with Megan had deepened after I invited her to join my foundation as a partner rather than an employee. Her organizational skills and genuine compassion had helped expand our financial literacy programs to communities across the state. The foundation itself had become my primary focus, providing not just financial education but also resources for recognizing and escaping financial abuse. When beneficiaries asked what had inspired such specific programming, I shared carefully edited versions of my own experience. finding that my story often helped others recognize patterns in their own relationships. One Tuesday morning, as I was reviewing grant proposals in my home office, I received an unexpected call from Brian. "I found something you should know about," he said. "A DNA registry match. 98% probability of half-sibling relationship. Your biological father's other child." My heart raced. "Have you verified it?" "Yes. Her name is Caroline Morgan. 42 years old, lives about 3 hours from you. Her father, your father, was Michael Morgan. He passed away 5 years ago." I sat in stunned silence, emotions churning. "There's more," Brian continued gently. "According to records I found, Michael Morgan spent years searching for a child he believed he had with Judith Walsh. He hired investigators, but your moth, Judith, denied everything, and without DNA testing being common back then, he eventually gave up the active search." Tears sprang to my eyes at the thought of a father who had wanted to know me, so different from the man who had raised me. "Would you like me to arrange contact with Caroline?" Brian asked. "Not yet," I replied. "I need time to process this." In the weeks that followed, I learned everything I could about Michael Morgan. He had been a university professor, beloved by students and colleagues alike. He had married later in life and had one daughter, Carolyn. He had been, by all accounts, kind, intelligent, and principled. Caroline Morgan, I discovered, was a pediatric surgeon with a reputation for compassionate care and innovative techniques. She had her father's eyes, my eyes. After much consideration and guidance from Dr. Brooks, I wrote Caroline a careful letter explaining our connection and my recent discovery of our relationship. I expected a long wait, perhaps even rejection, but her response came within days. Warm, curious, and open to connection. Our first meeting was at a quiet restaurant halfway between our homes. The resemblance between us was subtle but unmistakable. The conversation flowed easily, as if some genetic memory recognized kinship beyond our conscious minds. "Dad always told me I might have a half-sister out there," Caroline shared over dessert. "On his deathbed, he mentioned it again. His one regret was never finding you." She showed me photos of Michael, Jepter, our father, and I saw my own features reflected in his face. Caroline had brought a small box as well. "These were things Dad kept. For you, just in case he ever found you." Inside was a collection that brought tears to my eyes. Birthday cards for each year, never sent. A small savings account he'd established in hopes of someday funding my education. A journal of thoughts he'd written to his unknown daughter. "He would have been so proud of you," Caroline said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. "Of your success, yes, but more importantly, of your resilience." As spring turned to summer, Caroline introduced me to her husband and children, who welcomed me with an easy acceptance I'd never known in my original family. We discovered shared interests, similar mannerisms, even the same unusual allergy to a specific preservative. Nature had planted similarities that nurture couldn't erase. Jacob's first year of college ended successfully, and he spent part of the summer interning at my foundation. He was the only connection to my former family that I maintained, and his growth into a thoughtful, ethical young man gave me hope that toxic patterns could be broken. One evening, as I reviewed the Foundation's quarterly report, my security system alerted me to a car passing slowly by the gates. A car registered to Heather. It drove past without stopping, perhaps just curiosity or a moment of nostalgia on her part. A year earlier, such an incident would have triggered anxiety and fear. Now, I simply noted it and returned to my work. The power they once held over me had dissipated entirely. Later that week, my phone rang with an unknown number. Time was when I would have answered any call, afraid to miss an emergency or important connection. Now, with confidence in my boundaries, I simply blocked the number without answering. Whatever they might have wanted to say, I no longer needed to hear. That evening, I hosted a small dinner party in my garden. Caroline and her family, Nathan and Susan, Jacob home from college, Megan and her partner, Dr. Brooks, who had become a friend beyond our therapeutic relationship. As laughter echoed around the table under string lights and stars, I looked at these people who had chosen to be in my life for who I was, not what I could give them. The money that my family had seen as the ultimate prize had indeed changed my life, but not in the ways any of us had anticipated. It had stripped away pretense, exposed true natures, and ultimately freed me to build genuine connections based on mutual respect rather than obligation. The family we're born into may give us our beginning, but I finally understood that the family we choose gives us our future. My money hadn't cursed me after all, it had finally set me free. What's your experience with family and money? Has sudden wealth or financial change ever affected your relationships? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if you found this story meaningful, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to set boundaries, even with family. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember, sometimes the most valuable inheritance isn't money, but the wisdom to know who truly deserves a place in your life